find the allegation that the defendant used and intentionally and personally discharged a firearm, to wit, a 9mm handgun.
Even to the day she died at a hospice, she looked over during moments of clarity and apologized to me. I'm sorry. She blamed herself.
He's the one that's king slime. He is the most dangerous of the 28, Judge.
I am a smart guy. I am a good guy. I really got a good heart.
I wanted to plead guilty because I want to accept responsibility for what I do, what I did, and to try to take away some of the hurt I caused.
Luis Bracamontes.
Jury in the above entitled action determined that the penalty to be imposed upon Luis Enriquez Monroy Bracamontes for the murder of Sacramento County Sheriff's Deputy Daniel Oliver is death.
Born on June 8, 1970, in Mexico, became infamous for his violent actions in Northern California in 2014. On October 24th of that year, Bracamontes opened fire on 3 sheriff's deputies in the Sacramento metropolitan area. He killed Deputy Danny Oliver of the Sacramento County Sheriff's Department and Detective Michael Davis of the Placer County Sheriff's Department,
killing Sacramento County Sheriff's Deputy Danny Oliver and then Placer County Sheriff's Detective Michael Davis Jr.,
while also injuring a 3rd officer and a civilian. Bracamontes had a criminal history, including drug offenses, and had been deported from the United States multiple times before this attack. His actions were part of a broader debate about illegal immigration, as he was in the country unlawfully at the time of the killing.
A jury handing down the death penalty today to convicted and confessed cop killer.
Tears of both sorrow and joy today from the loved ones.
Bracamontes' trial became a media spectacle due to his violent outbursts in court and his disturbing statements. During the proceedings, he openly expressed his desire to kill more police officers, which led to increased media coverage and public outcry. His behavior in the courtroom, where he laughed and taunted the families of the victims, further fueled national outrage. Despite his defense team's claim that he was mentally ill and under the influence of drugs during the killings, the jury convicted Bracamontes of 2 counts of murder, attempted murder, carjacking, and other charges. In 2018, he was sentenced to death.
Madam Clerk, please read the verdicts.
Superior Court of California, County of Sacramento, the people of the state of California, plaintiff versus Luis Enriquez Monroy Bracamontes, defendant. Case number 14F07390, Department 21, verdict count 1. Regarding the charge in count 1, Luis Enriquez Monroy Bracamontes did unlawfully and with malice aforethought commit murder in the first degree of Sacramento County Sheriff's Deputy Daniel Oliver. We find the defendant guilty. We further find the allegation that the defendant used and intentionally and personally discharged a firearm, to wit, a 9mm handgun, and thereby approximately caused the death to be true.
Wearing the same chilling grin he wore during his double murder trial, Luis Bracamontes laughed as he heard his life's new fate, looking right in the eye of Danny's mother, Jerry, and clapping. She smiled back, her focus unfazed.
Justice is done for Danny and Mike.
The jury was officially dismissed from the case today.
We just want to make sure that we got it right.
Break out soon, and I will kill more.
From the offensive outburst by Bracamontes.
It was directed at us many times and worrisome in many ways.
To months of heartbreaking evidence and testimony, juror Sam Wood says it's been emotional.
When you're a juror on something like this, it pulls you into the experience that the families had. And that for me was very difficult and very emotional.
Jurors say the outbursts didn't and couldn't play a role in the jury's verdict, and while Vincent Shank says Bracamontes' own confessions made the guilt phase easier, today's verdict was a bit more heavy.
You're dealing with someone's life. It's not something to take lightly.
For the brutal murders of 2 local deputies, still grieving loved ones say death is a well-deserved sentence.
The case of Luis Bracamontes highlighted broader issues surrounding immigration laws and crime. His arrest and subsequent trial brought the debate over illegal immigration into the spotlight, especially as politicians and media outlets use the case to advance their respective agendas. In particular, President Donald Trump's re-election campaign highlighted Bracamontes' criminal history in a controversial ad linking illegal immigration to crime. The case also drew attention to the strained relationship between the United States and Mexico, with Bracamontes' multiple deportations raising questions about the effectiveness of U.S. immigration enforcement. Victor Rodas
spent 55 years in prison. Prosecutors said Rodas was the driver the night Woods was lured from his home before being brutally attacked and killed with a knife.
Relentless and untamed. Victor Rodas, a 17-year-old alleged MS-13 gang member, was convicted in October 2023 for the brutal murder of Raymond Wood, a 16-year-old from Lynchburg, Virginia.
The dragon's head was pulled out of a box and shown to the jury this afternoon. Maddox told the prosecution the blade alone was over 9 inches.
In 2017, Wood was found in Bedford County with 29 stab wounds, leading to his tragic death. The investigation revealed that Rodas, along with other gang associates, had abducted and murdered Wood, allegedly in connection with gang activity. During the trial, evidence suggested that Rodas had played a key role in the killing, which was believed to be an execution-style murder, part of MS-13's violent tactics to maintain control and instill fear. The jury found Rodas guilty on multiple charges, including first-degree murder, abduction, and gang participation.
An admitted MS-13 gang member also testified. He talked about his prior gang activity before being arrested. He also talked about the culture and day-to-day activity of being an MS-13 member, what they do and don't, and how to be a part of the gang and how to get out. Testimony continues this afternoon. We will have the latest from the courthouse tonight.
The case brought attention to the growing problem of gang violence in Virginia, particularly the influence of MS-13, a notorious criminal organization with a heavy presence in the U.S. and internationally. Rodas was sentenced to a total of 55 years in prison, with the jury recommending 35 years for first-degree murder, 10 years for abduction, and another 10 years for his involvement in gang activities. The prosecution highlighted the extreme nature of the crime, which involved not only a violent killing, but also an abduction, underlining the dangers of gang involvement and its impact on the community. The sentencing was seen as a significant step in holding gang members accountable for the harm they caused to both their victims and society.
And on June 6th of this year, Maddox went to Long Hill Road. Maddox says as he was returning to his car, something caught his eye.
So I decided instead of walking back through the high grass, I would walk straight through the woods to my car. I walked about 20 yards and looked down because it was a shimmer of light that hit just right, caught my attention. I looked down on the ground and saw a dragon's head, a metal dragon's head on top of the ground.
The dragon's head was pulled out of a box and shown to the jury this afternoon. Maddox told the prosecution the blade alone was over 9 inches. He also said he recognized the knife from an earlier picture showing it in a shadow box hanging on a wall. A co-conspirator who cannot be named says he met with other members of the MS-13 Sailors Clique.
Raymond Wood's family and the local community were left devastated by the loss, and the trial underscored the ongoing efforts of law enforcement to dismantle MS-13's network in the region. The case also prompted further discussions about the role of gangs in recruiting young individuals and using violence to settle disputes. As gang-related crimes continue to rise, the conviction of Rodas serves as both a warning and a reminder of the dangers posed by criminal organizations operating within the U.S. The sentencing of Rodas is one step toward addressing this serious issue, but it also highlights the need for continued prevention and intervention programs aimed at curbing gang violence. In August 2021, Noah Lup Hall.
3 men now headed to prison for a series of shootings in 2021 that killed a teenage student and paralyzed another man.
And they each got significant sentences.
And 4 accomplices, Aiden Sides, Isaiah Freeman, Samuel Fussell, and Seth LaRode, engaged in a multi-day crime spree across the Denver metro area. Their actions included carjackings, burglaries, armed robberies, and shootings. The spree resulted in the tragic death of 18-year-old Shmuel Silverberg, a student at Yeshiva Torres Chaim, and left Thomas Young paralyzed from a gunshot wound. The crimes terrorized multiple victims and deeply impacted Denver's Jewish community, especially as Silverberg was targeted near his religious school.
Even to the day she died at a hospice, she looked over during moments of clarity and apologized to me. I'm sorry. She blamed herself.
Nobody deserved what I did to them. I wanted to plead guilty because I want to accept responsibility for what I did, and to try to take away some of the hurt I caused.
Jeffrey Williams.
For conspiracy to violate the racketeer influence and criminal street gang activity.
Jeffrey Williams was a name that carried weight in the underworld. He wasn't just another thug on the street. He was a kingpin who ran a vast network of crime. Drug trafficking, extortion, and even murder were all part of his empire. The life sentence that was handed to him after his conviction was seen as the end of an era, the fall of a man who had built a criminal empire through intimidation and ruthlessness. But Williams's reaction to his sentence was anything but submissive. In fact, it was a declaration of defiance.
I'm concerned with a human being who's wrongly charged. I knew right away that he's been targeted for 10 years by the prosecution. This is a wrong prosecution.
The series of violent events began on August 15th with a carjacking and shooting, and continued on August 17th with robberies, assaults, and the fatal attack on Silverberg. According to investigators, the group's actions were coordinated and aggressive. They chased Silverberg into his school after firing shots at him and physically assaulted him in the vestibule before fleeing. Meanwhile, Young was critically injured during a carjacking earlier that night. The victims' families and the broader community were left shaken by the senseless violence and its devastating outcomes.
He's the one that's king slime. He is the most dangerous of the 28, Judge.
I am a smart guy. I am a good guy, and I really got a good heart. You know, I find myself in a lot of stuff because I was just nice or cool, you know, and I understand that you can't be that way when you reach a certain height, because it could end bad, and it don't really have to have nothing to do with you, but it could end bad and it could, you know, fall on you. And I know the choice is yours, it's up to you.
David Moses.
Moses, who was 17 at the time, entered the house of Dorothy Session on April 14, 2010, and hit her during a burglary, knocking her down.
In 2010, David Moses, then 17, and his accomplices, Angelique and Katila Nash, broke into the home of 81-year-old Dorothy Session in Bakersfield, California, intending to rob her. During the burglary, Moses attacked Session, leaving her with fatal blunt force injuries. The group fled without stealing anything after Sessions' screams drew attention. Her tragic death shocked the community, as Session was known as a kind and generous woman.
Juveniles can be sentenced, as well as a charge to the felony murder rule, which now says a person must actually commit or aid in a killing or have intent to kill.
Moses was convicted of first-degree murder, with the jury concluding that his actions during the burglary led to Sessions' death. Although Moses was a minor at the time, the severity of the crime and California's laws permitted him to be sentenced to life without parole. His accomplices also faced significant penalties for their roles in the crime. The sentence was based on the brutality of the attack and its premeditated nature, highlighting the seriousness of targeting a vulnerable victim.
Aid in a killing or have intent to kill. Now, at today's hearing, the defense hoped the judge would potentially reduce his sentence from life without the possibility of parole to 25 years to life. Instead, the judge resentenced him today.
California's evolving juvenile justice laws later allowed Moses to challenge his life sentence. Legislation like SB 260 provided opportunities for resentencing, considering his age at the time of the crime. Despite appeals, the courts upheld Moses' original sentence, emphasizing the gravity of his actions and their devastating consequences for Sessions' family and the broader community. The case remains a stark example of the legal and moral complexities surrounding juvenile offenders in severe crimes.